All right, 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 all right. We're moving on from the Panama Canal to Greenland, okay? Donald Trump is trying to purchase Greenland, or not purchase Greenland, or colonize Greenland. And there's a reason for it. And yesterday we dove into it a little bit. With our favorite boy, Donald Harris. Donald Harris talked about America's plans for Greenland. I'm going to go back to that now and watch that video. I'm finished that video where we left off.
This massive island is located
China and the USA are fighting over Greenland is the title of the video. Okay. Poor lady, little lady. Please cover Denmark's response from last time where they counter-offered to buy America. Yeah, I don't think they have that. I don't think they have the money to do such things like that. Picking up where we rage quit? No, I didn't even rage quit. I had to go play Marvel Rivals.
Conveniently within the Arctic Circle. This is why it was the chosen jumping off point for Arctic explorers who were trying to be the first to reach the North Pole in the early 1900s. In fact, the US recognized that this massive island was a smart geopolitical location a long time ago, convincing Greenland's colonizers to help them evict an Inuit community so that they could put an airbase up here. The top of the world turned out to be a perfect location to traverse their growing empire and to spy on the Soviets during the Cold War. They even had nuclear weapons up here for a time. And it wasn't just one base. Over the course of the 20th century, the US set up a handful of military bases in Greenland. They used this island to put up these massive radar systems, which would serve as early warning in case a Soviet invasion came from the north. And now it just looks like a full-blown prop from a Star Wars movie. I mean, look at these. So Greenland's strategic potential was clear, but once the Soviet threat went away, the US mostly abandoned its presence here. Though they still have that base way up north, and they've turned it actually into the base of their Space Force. But they eventually closed down their embassy in the capital, and Greenland went back to being nothing really useful to the great powers. Just a frozen island at the doorstep of a frozen ocean. So Greenland, this massive Arctic island at the gateway to the Arctic Ocean, is now becoming much more important. That's because this ocean that's always been frozen is melting more and more every year, opening it up to new trade routes, to new resources, to new versions of influence that can be exerted at the top of our planet. And so great powers are once again paying attention to this place. Because great powers no longer see a desolate frozen island, they see opportunity. They see an island perfectly located.
Seeing the world like this is so weird to me. It's never normal. Like, I don't know if I'm alone in this, but I'm so used to seeing the thing. It like freaks me out. Orientalist brain. Yeah. I mean, it's not even Orientalist. I think it's like this is the Santa-centric model. That's literally Empire think, brother. I know.
Close to new enticing shipping lanes. They see an island with territorial waters full of new resources, whose territorial claims theoretically extend all the way past the North Pole, incidentally overlapping with Russia and Canada. They see the potential of this place being a repository of rare earth elements, the stuff we need to build modern electronics like cell phones, computer hard drives, and electric vehicles. Suddenly, this place is becoming a lot more valuable in the eyes of people who want power. A fact that was highlighted by a guy who spent his life sniffing out real estate deals on land that was about to become valuable.
Trump wants to buy Greenland.
It's a large real estate deal. So the concept came up, and I said, certainly I'd be strategically, it's interesting.
Yeah, that actually happened. Boy, that was a crazy 4 years. I'm glad it's over.
Jonald from a year ago, boy, do I have something to tell you, Jonald. Okay, it's back, baby. It's back and better than ever.
Anyway, the point is that Greenland is now getting loads of attention and becoming much more valuable. Which brings me here to perhaps the clearest symbol of this renewed interest in Greenland.
If I'm like an Inuit living in Greenland, I'd be hiding all the minerals. I'd be like, nah, there's no minerals here. Desperately trying to make it seem like there's no natural resources. Please stop digging. Please stop digging. There's no oil, no minerals here. Don't come here at all. Okay, it's just ice, bro. You don't want that, I promise. Yeah, I'd be kicking snow over the minerals. Just like just push some snow onto it, just brush some snow onto it. Be like, what? Minerals? What are you talking about? Mineral, get out of here. It's just snow, please. Please leave.
Is the new U.S. consulate in Nuuk. After saying they planned to buy the country, the Trump administration backed down after Denmark was like, hell no, get out of here, and instead took a different approach. They ramped up efforts to build relations between Greenland and the United States, building mutual economic interests, which resulted in the opening of this consulate just in 2020. The U.S. now has a diplomatic presence, a physical presence in Greenland, this big frozen island that no global superpower really thought was that important until recently.
I'm pleased to announce we will reopen our
Denmark is not giving this away. Are you insane, Law, brother? I don't think it's about what Denmark wants or needs. I think if there's enough, I'm sure Iraq didn't want to be invaded either. You know? Now, obviously, Denmark and Iraq are different, but still. Trump's talking about invading Canada and Mexico, man. They're about to find some weapons of mass destruction in Greenland. Oops. Turns out Denmark had chemical weapons. They were using mustard gas on their own civilian population, I promise. Trust.
Our consulate in Nuuk, Greenland this summer for the first time since 1953.
So this actually reminds me of
You're crazy if you think the U.S. will go and just take it. Name a single example where the U.S. didn't respect the wishes of the natives. True. I can't think of any. The only thing that keeps it relatively neutral would be, I guess, the interests of other global power players like China and regional players like Russia as well. That basically is the only thing I think that keeps this in somewhat of a limbo, rather than America coming in and being like, nah, that's ours actually. Is Greenland Sunni or Shiite?
a story I did a while back when I was up in the...
I know this is all, but I had to wait 10 minutes to send this. You have single-handedly convinced me to start nicotine. Thank you, Hasan. Man, shut the fuck up. Don't even joke about that shit, dumbass.
Arctic for Vox Borders, and I was visiting a Russian consulate on this little island. And it truly never ceases to surprise me that in an era of like sophisticated alliances and like international institutions and like sophisticated military weaponry, we still resort to just putting human bodies and buildings in places that we want to have influence in. Like it's a board game. Some things will never change. But as the US looks to deepen its ties with Greenland, so is another power, another global superpower, one that incidentally is nowhere near the Arctic. But who knows that if they want to be the top dog on the world stage, they're gonna need a foothold in this new region.
A race for resources could lead to a boil-over.
A lot of focus is placed on the Chinese. They do control a significant amount of supply.
We are so adamant that these areas of the world that
Australians love mining, dude. They can't get enough of it. It's not enough that they've mined the shit out of their own fucking island, that they're mining all around the world. They love mining. They love miners.
the arteries of trade and shipping remain peaceful.
There is a worry of this Chinese possible infiltration in the country.
In 2017, Greenland wanted to build more airports, like the one behind me that they're building. Here in Greenland, they don't have a lot of infrastructure for big airplanes, so you can't get like big commercial flights in and out of large amounts of the country. You have to fly around in small planes and helicopters, which is kind of cool if you're like going on an adventure. But if you're trying to develop your country, you need bigger airports. The problem is building airports is expensive, and no one wanted to fund this, except for China. The Prime Minister of Greenland went to Beijing, their friend, and said, hey, do you want to help us fund our new airports? China was like, yes, we will give you a loan to fund the airports, but it has to be.
I'm Danish. Greenland can decide what they want for themselves according to Denmark. As of the Self-Government Act of 2009, Greenland is effectively self-governed, but Denmark provides free education by making them travel to Denmark and free healthcare. Since this colonial relationship is still problematic and has issues, but even anti-Denmark, Greenlandic people have said they'd rather be under Denmark forever than be under the U.S. Yeah, that makes sense. Wait till American propaganda comes in, though. The only thing that, like, notice how there was a chatter, Delayed Autistic Guppy, that was talking about this yesterday. The colonial relationship within Greenland and Denmark is, like, objectively kept Greenland poor. You will probably see that sort of propaganda resurface over and over again, talking about how, like, they'll go and they'll find like a group of natives, for example, and they'll pump them. And they'll be like, look, these guys organically want to be a part of America. They hate they hate Denmark. And, Leslie Stahl will do a 60 Minutes feature on the native population that desperately wants American contracts and are terrified of the Chinese intervention in the country. And then they'll manufacture consent that way. They'll beef up a separatist movement. You're going to get the most annoying Radlib accounts tweeting about how problematic it is. Yeah. This repressed minority that wants freedom. They yearn for freedom. They want American contracts instantly. And then they'll say, Hasan, why do you personally hate autonomy? Why do you hate the autonomy of native Greenlanders who simply want better American contracts? They want what's best for themselves. Why are you getting in there? Why are you being so paternalistic where you think you know what's best for them? Keep Leslie Stahl out of your mouth. It would be Scott Pelley easy. No, it'll be Leslie Stahl. Now, that is if the Trump administration behaves in a more competent manner like the Democrats have whenever they have any sort of imperial ambitions. The Trump administration, on the other hand, was very ineffective. The State Department was probably at its weakest, I think, under the Trump admin. Like, the Democrats certainly are better at crafting a narrative. Republicans used to be better at this. Like, obviously, the war on terror and the propaganda that ensued in the Bush administration was pretty solid. But since then, I would say that the Democrats have taken over that mantle. And the Trump admin was genuinely ineffective at doing this sort of stuff. Like, they are much more openly cruel and don't engage in enough like clandestine operations, no psychological operations whatsoever. They just go and they assassinate. Like, the Qasem Soleimani assassination comes to mind, right? It's the type of shit that I think, if done under a Democratic leadership, would be done with a lot more manufactured consent. Whereas, like, under the Trump administration, it's more brute force and more open, where they're just like, yeah, no, we killed them. What are you going to do about it? Or we're pulling our troops out of Syria, except for the oil fields, where they will maintain the oil fields. Why wouldn't we take the Syrian oil? Are you fucking stupid? Like, it's not as tactful. So we'll see how Trump operates. We'll see how Trump navigates this space.
Be a Chinese construction company that builds the airports. And Greenland was like, okay, let's do it. That sounds great. And immediately over...
Where the fuck is China getting so much money? They're dumping a shitload of money into my country, Pakistan, as well. What do you mean, dude? It's the manufacturing hub for the planet.
In the United States, alarm bells start going off. This is not good. The context here is that China has a habit of giving loans to countries that they want to have influence in, in the future. They do this a lot in Africa. They give loans knowing that they now have leverage over all of these countries who now owe them money. Anyway, so the United States...
Okay, that's once again infinitely more favorable conditions, a lot more opportunities for loan forgiveness, no immediate austerity, austerity measures kicking in. There's no, just to point out that this is at this point we've put this to bed, right? No matter how much people say well, the Belt and Road Initiative is also Chinese imperialism. How do you not recognize that? And the attitude that people have demonstrated against China engaging in any sort of development initiatives, doing any sort of soft power stuff around the globe has now been put to bed. Foreign Policy Magazine and many other overtly right-wing pro-empire think tanks have recognized that the debt trap that the IMF and the World Bank have offered the global South is no longer competitive now that the Chinese market, now that there's a new game in town where a lot of these people can personally get infinitely more favorable loans with a lot better conditions from the Chinese government. Something that even those who have a vested interest in the continuation of American empire have come to terms with and want the IMF and World Bank to change its ways.
Sees this potential deal happening between Greenland and China and hates it. Greenland, this place that is so strategically located, that is right next to the United States, that is really a huge part of the future of global influence in the Arctic, suddenly in debt to China? No. In fact, the Pentagon freaked out and was like, what if Greenland defaults on their payments to China and China seizes the airports and starts using it for their military? A little bit of an alarmist, doomsday scenario. But it's true. When you owe someone money, they have leverage over you. The U.S. did not like this. So the U.S. goes to Denmark and tells...
It is very much like projection, I think, to run with that attitude. So far, it has not happened, right? So far, it has not happened. And that is the American position. It's like, well, they will do to us what we've done to them, which is a common perspective throughout history. Slave owning whites in the antebellum thought that if black people were liberated, that they would enslave white people, that they would enact violence and vengeance against their former master. Now, history has shown that it's usually those who had the power that seek to continue that domination, to continue to restore the racial pecking order. That's why you have the Ku Klux Klan, and that's what happened in the Reconstruction era. And yet, this is a commonly shared opinion. This is something that Americans broadly believe as well, which is that if China became the dominant hegemonic superpower, they would do to us what we have done to the global South and what we've done to China historically. If they do defaults on payments, what do you think China would do in response? Well, we don't actually have to assume what would happen in this hypothetical. It has happened many times over. China has engaged in loan forgiveness virtually every single time. Here, this is Voice of America news. Like, this is directly coming from the CIA. China cancels 23 loans to Africa amid debt trap debate. It forgave 23 of the 17 loans that it had given to African countries. And the American cope on that front was, it's because they want to still do debt trap stuff, but they just don't want Americans to be they just don't want America to know that they're doing debt trap stuff. I think that part of the reason why they're doing this is because they also want to create secondary markets. They want to keep selling to Africa. And in order to keep selling to Africa, they need to develop Africa, recognizing that there is a need to develop Africa, the African continent. It's still ultimately self-interested. And it's certainly not a consequence of like some kind of ideological play, They forgave the debts but build military naval bases. Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that, because I think the Chinese military base development in the African continent is literally minuscule in comparison to how many fucking military bases America has in Africa. What are you talking about? There's like what? How many bases exist? How many Chinese bases exist overseas? Yeah, they built their first ever overseas military naval base in 2023 in Djibouti in 2017. Sorry, on 2023, which is if you've watched enough like YouTube foreign policy videos, you understand the significance of Djibouti, where there is also obviously a U.S. base as well. The reason for that is because of its access point into the Red Sea. If you watched a single foreign policy map-based YouTube autism account, you already know that, though. Real life lore and the like.
Tells them to kill the deal. Denmark does it. They agree. And suddenly...
Yeah, America has 800 confirmed military bases, like open, out in broad daylight. Okay, so China literally has no motivations outside of helping people, and it's completely magnanimous. Did I say that? Point to where I said that. I said the exact opposite. I said that it's still self-interested. I didn't say that at all. I said the exact opposite. I said that it's still self-interested. They're not even contrary to like the way that the USSR operated foreign policy, where there was at least some like ideological through line. China doesn't even have that. They're not like operating at the behest of like implementing global socialism either. There is no investment in that regard. It is simply leverage against America's crumbling hegemonic power. And the other reason, I think, and this is suspicion, this is speculation, is because they want to develop secondary markets that they can sell to. Not only are they utilizing America's dominance and colonial history to their advantage as a much more favorable lender. Okay. They also, like, America has been the dominant force on the planet since even before the end of the USSR, but certainly after, right? And in that dominance, in that Western dominance, I think Western superpowers have grown comfortable and have also increased the cruelty in the ways that they subject people into debt traps. Okay. Now that there is a competitive superpower, that competitive superpower can basically leverage America's pre-existing cruel conditions to their advantage. This way, they get to develop genuine allegiances with a shit ton of the planet, with with massive chunks of the planet, especially in areas that are very resource rich. African countries obviously have rare earth minerals and a shit ton of raw materials necessary specifically for the future of energy. China having more favorable loans and having better relationships with these countries allows them to dominate, specifically in the field of renewable energy. It seems over time China is reacting to government action from the US, but I'm asking is when China does eventually take over, it seems like they won't fuck over poor countries the way America does. We don't know. I don't know that. You don't know that either. I'm not going to say that that's what's going to happen. I wouldn't make a broad sweeping claim like that. I'm just simply reacting to what I've seen thus far.
Is now funding 2/3 of these airport projects. China got rejected on these airport deals thanks to US pressure. But they didn't give up. They started setting their sights on those rare earth minerals that we talked about earlier, the vital ingredients for your phone, your computer, and your electric car. China holds a near monopoly on mining and processing these minerals. So they see Greenland as an opportunity to continue that near monopoly, but also an opportunity to access the Arctic, another place where they can compete with Western interests. It started when this Chinese corporation made a deal to fund a zinc and lead mine in the far north of Greenland. It was all going to plan until the Australian owners of this mine suddenly decided to end their deal. Oh, and shortly thereafter, they got a $650 million check from the United States to fund the project. Once again, the US blocked their rival from getting a foothold in the Arctic. Another Chinese company has had their mining licenses revoked entirely by the government of Greenland. So between this diplomatic pressure, as well as some local anti-mining political sentiment, China has been blocked time and time again from getting its foothold on this island.
China's words and actions raise doubts about its intentions. Beijing claims to be a near Arctic state, yet the shortest distance between China and the Arctic is 900 miles.
So yeah, the USA has made its stance very clear that they don't want China, a non-Arctic nation, to be meddling in this region, to be gaining a foothold in the gateway to the Arctic, this region that is opening up, that is becoming really important.
Yeah, America, on the other hand, has Alaska, so we are an Arctic nation, you know? It is really funny for America to say this. Okay, why the fuck are you in the Middle East then, dog? Are you a Middle Eastern nation? Why are you in the South China Sea? What do you mean? Where is America not in? Okay? There is not a singular solitary place on this fucking planet that America doesn't have its tentacles in. Like, what are we talking about? It's just a little bit of self-reflection, I think, is necessary in this process, but I don't know. What the fuck do I know?
And in addition to blocking China's efforts, the US has also stepped up their own efforts to get more US influence and presence in this place, to prepare for the future of geopolitical conflict. The US is doing investments on its own, investing billions of dollars in military infrastructure in this region, including a $4 billion upgrade of that air and space installation in the north. They're also committing to military training exercise within the Arctic. The US Army has been sending their soldiers to train in Arctic-like conditions, to mimic what conflict might look and feel like in the high north. The US government is offering millions of dollars in aid directly to Greenland to help them develop their mining and tourism sectors. So yeah, once again, we see the struggle for influence playing out between great powers in all of these kind of hard-to-see battlefields. Loans, infrastructure, blocking trade deals, diplomatic pressure, military presence. This is kind of the flavor of modern conflict. I mean, not the Russian flavor of modern conflict, but like the great powers conflict plays out in these other ways, these hard-to-see ways, these bureaucratic, systematic ways. But who cares about these big superpowers and what they want for Greenland? I came to the capital Nuuk to talk to my friend Kupanuk about what Greenlanders actually want. After all, this is their island. They should decide how it's used and by whom.
So we are not just looking the Western world through Denmark anymore, but we'll see more globally. So we're starting to realize more and more how lucky we actually are.
That's super interesting. It turns out that about half of Greenlanders actually think it's a good thing that China is increasing in its power and influence around the globe. But when you ask them specifically...
Shut it down. Shut it down. Johnny, don't say that. Johnny, you're supposed to do the opposite. Johnny!
About China investing in Greenland, they're more hesitant, with nearly 70% saying that they oppose
thank God.
foreign...
Okay, thank God. Okay, no. He's good. He saved. Okay, we're safe. I was worried for a second that his contract was going to dry up, saying stuff like, "Oh, well, half of the island natives are pro China, but 70% of them hate Chinese investment."
Foreign investment from China. But a country like Greenland, which has such a fraught history with colonizers, also has reservations about Western interests here too.
And a lot of injustices have been and are still being done in colonial and decolonial nations. More and more things are just being shown now because people are more aware of their rights and more aware of the rights that are being violated.
So Greenlanders are waking up to their power in this situation, waking up to the leverage that they have in this new global competition. And while they might have their concerns about China and the West, they're looking for the best deal for their country.
The first ones must be our closest friends and like.
Where is the other? Why didn't he mention what level of what percentage of Greenlanders love American investment? I'm sure it's significant. It's like 98% of Greenlanders actually want American investment. Famously, things that the wokes don't want you to know or hear about.
Minded nations. And then if other countries want to invest in Greenland and in our way, we are open for business.
So as we move into this new era of great power competition, the map is changing in unexpected ways. Add to that the warming globe that is creating a new ocean, and suddenly this island, so often forgotten by great powers, is now in a position of leverage.
There are many Greenlandic people who haven't realized how powerful we can be, how much is like...
Man, the Balkans wanted American investment so fucking bad, dude, and they gave us neoliberalism, GG. Yeah, but it's good. McDonald's.
I don't know how small Denmark is without Greenland. It's like, it's just a tiny, tiny country if they didn't have us. We should be more aware of it and be more proud of it and realize how powerful we can actually be in the future.
No, they don't classify Greenland as a state sponsor of terror. What they would do is just go to they would go to a group of people that live there and then turn around and say they hate Denmark, they hate the way that Denmark has managed Greenland, and they would say that these guys actually also are very skeptical of China and don't want Chinese intervention in their country, and that they want American they're much more favorable to American investments in the country. That's the way I would cut propaganda. I'd say that, like, I would say that the way to do this would be saying that they hate Chinese investment, they're skeptical of Chinese investment, and that they actually are very open to American investment. Fun fact, McDonald's failed in my Balkan city, ate only local barbecue and meat law, still fighting it. Yeah, a concerned citizens group. NGOs start popping up left and right, you know. Kaya is ready for her flight movie and Peanuts. Also, brief update, but the BBC finally acknowledges it misled viewers when it used video showing fans from Israeli football club Maccabi Tel Aviv attacking people on the street, whilst implying Israeli fans were the victims in the video. During an interview on, what is this? Help and feedback, corrections and clarifications. This came on the 23rd of December, okay? Like yesterday. They came out and apologized for their 8th of November coverage. During an interview on Newsline with an Israeli fan about disorder after a football match between Maccabi Tel Aviv and Ajax in Amsterdam, we used stills and footage from the night to accompany the conversation. This included footage shot near the Amsterdam Central Station, appearing to show a large group chasing and attacking an individual. However, the author of the clip said separately on social media she had filmed Maccabi supporters attacking a Dutch man, and so its inclusion during this segment and some previous use when reporting the reaction... to the disorder on the BBC News channel could have given the impression that this was illustrating attacks on Israeli fans. We acknowledge that we should have been clearer about the context and that the use of the footage here was intended to illustrate the general disorder and are happy to correct the record. They're happy to correct the record like months later. I mean, that's crazy. That actually is so indecent. Really shameful that it took us so long, considering most of us knew immediately. Seemed like they wanted us to forget. Yeah, it's wild because the person that was like, that's my footage.